Okay. Let me get my questions. Okay. Okay. Are you alright there, love? Okay. Hi everyone. Can you start with the sound effects, please? Which one am I looking into? This one?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to the Team Bayayi YouTube channel. My name is Afia Bayayi, and our channel is all about growth, learning, and development for families. So if you like our content, please do help our channel to grow and subscribe so that you never miss a video. I'm really excited about today's session. It's very different to what we've ever done before. I'm actually going to be interviewing my husband, Bayayi, who I've been married to now for 15 years. And so, toot toot beep beep.
Okay, what does that mean?
Like 15 years.
Toot toot beep beep?
No, it's like... Okay.
All right.
Now, I always say that when it comes to life, like the person that you marry, the person that you have children with is one of the most important decisions that you will make in your life. And it really does impact your parenting. It really does have an effect on your children, who it is that you are married to and who it is that is, you know, in this partnership with you of parenting. And so that is actually the theme of today's video. We're going to be talking about how our marriage has impacted parenting, and I've got a number of questions for you, Fry.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for actually saying yes to do this.
Yeah, okay. No, I've been looking forward to this.
Is it?
It's about time. I was on the screen. I've only got one video on your page.
It's quite short as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is.
Thank you for coming. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Gosh, I'm 25 years old. I was originally...
Okay, that's not true. Tell us a bit about yourself, like honesty.
Okay, all right. Born in Zimbabwe. I'm a Zimbabwean, proud to the people. Came to this country when I was about maybe 8 years old. Went back for a stint, experienced boarding school and all that kind of stuff. I had a really good time there, got to know God a little bit. Came to this country when I was 16 years old. Within a year, totally forgot about religion and all that kind of stuff. Wanted to live my life. By the time I was 23, I was a weed smoker, drank every day. I've done most drugs, apart from the really, really serious ones, but most of them I've done. I was in a rap group. 23 years old, my sister invites me to church. I end up, the experiences I had when I was in boarding school in Zimbabwe, kind of like came to the surface, and I remembered how good it was to know God. So I ended up surrendering to God again, and I started going back to church, left the old life, and in a very short space of time I met you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she was my sister's friend at the time, and so I'd always see her morning prayer, so we started chatting. Then I asked you out, and then you said yes before I knocked on your door, and you opened and you said yes, and I said to you, like, I haven't even said anything yet, like, just calm down.
Oh, whatever.
Calm down. I found out later on that she was praying over my photos.
That's not true.
It is true.
It's not true.
Everyone knows it.
It's not true.
She was laying a hold
You're
of the photo.
Okay. Can you just, I just asked you to introduce yourself.
You said tell me a bit about myself. I can't talk about me without talking about you, because you're a bit of me.
All right.
Okay, so in 2003, we started to talk. 2004, we were engaged.
Yeah.
2005, we were married.
Yeah.
Okay, right, got the timeline right. And then from then, threw myself into the church. I got to love God, love people, ended up becoming a pastor about 8 years ago, and I'm so glad you came with me. We were both reluctant at first, to be honest, but I think that's pretty much where we're at the moment. We now have 3 beautiful children, and we're still enjoying the ride and waiting for Jesus to come back.
How long were we married before we started having children? Do you remember?
Yeah. It was about 8 years. Eight.
So, hold on. We had our first child 8 years in. But that was planned though. We didn't actually, we weren't trying or anything like that. We deliberately left that space of time. Why did we do that?
I love children. I've always have. And if everyone from the Croydon church would know, I was always playing with kids. And so when we got married, I couldn't wait to have our own. But I don't think we were where we needed to be in our own maturity, financially, in our relationship. There's just so much things that had to happen for us specifically before we had children. And so very wisely, I think, in hindsight, it was for us the best thing to do to wait, the 7 years before we jumped straight into having children. But I do remember there was a sense of, let's just put some things in place first before we actually start that journey. And in hindsight, I think it was a good idea.
And I feel like children change the dynamics of a relationship.
100%.
Because they become the center and the focus. So if you already have certain foundations in place, it helps. But at the same time, we got married quite young, so we could afford to wait. And I appreciate it's not necessarily that case with everybody.
Yeah.
So did you have any idea of what type of father you were going to be before you became one?
You look hot,
Thank you.
You look very nice. Yes, I did. I thought I was going to be the best dad in the world in terms of, you have people give you their children to look after or to play with, and they love you. You're throwing them in the air and you're spinning them around and you're telling them jokes and you're doing really cheesy magic tricks, and they love you. And so in my mind, that's the kind of dad I was going to be. I was going to be fully attentive to my children, always making them laugh, throwing them in the air, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, if you don't have any children, after you babysit or you play with someone or whatever, if you're in nursery, you give the child back to the parent. And then they have to deal with everything else, which I've learned since then, which puts up the whole package of what being a parent is. But after having, from Benjamin, our firstborn, you realize that this parenting thing is not, it's not like that whatsoever.
So did you have any idea of what type of father you did not want to be?
Yeah, I think obviously being raised where my father was not around for the majority of my life, I think my preference in terms of this is what I don't want to do is just simply, it was just as simple as just not, I didn't want to be the father that was not there for their children. Emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever the case may be, I want to be present, I want to be there. I don't want there to be a gap of memories. So I grew up with my dad, who I love, by the way. We just don't have that kind of relationship we ought to have. But I grew up with him and I had really good memories when I was younger. Then there's this massive gap of years where he's just not around. And so I had other father figures and some of them were not that great. Let me say this, I had other people I gravitated towards to be a father figure for me, but they themselves needed the same guidance and to be led in the right direction. So the blind was leading the blind. And so I can be a lot of things that are not right, but one thing I can get right is just being there for them. When people grow up and they grow up without their fathers, there's something missing. That's a fact. The problems that we have in society are mainly coming from fatherless homes. And so what tends to happen is they gravitate towards someone older that can give them that kind of affirmation that they should have when they're younger. This is why you have this thing in the gang culture. I don't know if they still have it today, but back in the day, it was you had the olders and the youngers. And so it's just, there's even a family setup, even in the gang's environment, where the youngers or the more inexperienced one look up to someone that can give them some sort of guidance, even though that guidance is the wrong type. So yeah, I think part of me, without knowing it at the time, when I was around these older men, they would give me the kind of affirmation I didn't realize at the time that I needed. Oh, you can do this and you can rap and blah, blah, blah. And it gave you a sense of identity and belonging. And, So it was no fault of them. They didn't know what I was looking for, and they couldn't be what I needed at the time to. But there are certain things that they put in me at that time that made me who I am today. And so I think I'm very appreciative of that. In fact, I love them for that. But role models are very, very good, very, very important. But correct role models are even better.
Yeah. And so, you talked about the father's being present, and that's the most important thing. What if a father is present, but his presence is toxic or negative? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
If the child is in danger, if there's abuse, if there is, just literally a life endangerment and mental endangerment and all that kind of stuff, then yeah, I think it's better if that presence was not there. In a nutshell, basically, love, I think it depends on the environment. The more toxic, the better it would be for some form of separation in order to protect the child, especially if we're talking about abuse and that kind of stuff, especially if the child's life is in danger. But if the father is there, but he's absent emotionally, he's absent spiritually, he's absent in terms of he's just not there, he's there but he's not there, then to say that, is we better off if he wasn't there at all, I think it's a bit of a stretch. I think there's always some sort of hope in trying to change that situation. But again, it's a very wide thing, and I think that particular question is probably good for an entire conversation.
And so when it comes to, like, we both didn't grow up in homes whereby we had mum and dad present throughout our childhood. So our children are getting to experience something that we didn't. And when I say present, as in they, married in the same home throughout the whole time. And so I know that you're very particular about showing a united front. So for example, you do not like for us to have arguments or disagreements in front of the children.
Yeah.
And at the same, like, if they are, if they're being out of line towards me, you always say to them, do not talk to my wife like that, rather than to your mum. So do you want to share a bit about that? I
got it from someone. I remember it was either preached or someone mentioned it, but I got that whole idea from someone else. I didn't come up with it, but it really resonated with me because the whole idea behind that was, listen, we were here before you were. Right? This is a team. You and I are a team. We were together 7 years before we had the first child, and so this is a unit that can't be broken, because kids like sometimes to children like to.
I don't like the word kid, because a kid is a baby goat. So. Children
sometimes like to play against the parents. If one parent says no, they'll go to the other one, and hoping that the other parent will say yes, and it works sometimes. And so they need to be able to respect the authority in the house, and they can't do that, number one, if we are disrespecting each other in front of them. Just literally yesterday, you suggested I should wear my jacket because it might rain outside, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Then you told your son, you wear your jacket. He looked at me and then he goes, nah, I'm not going to do it. So I noticed that, and I'm conscious of it. Say, okay, the way I respond to you and the way I treat you, that's going to trickle down. So if I'm showing you great respect, if they never see us having, I don't think it's bad for them to see us disagree if it's in a civil manner. But if things are escalating to the point of an argument, for example, then they shouldn't see that. There can be an argument, but but that's not the real world. You're shrouding them in this bubble. But trust me, they remember that, and when they enter into their own relationships, it's a reference point, because they'll know when they get to a certain age, arguments exist, people disagree. But I remember when I was growing up in my house, I never saw my dad raise his voice. I never saw my mom throw anything, and I think that means a lot, and that holds a lot of weight. But in terms of how they communicate with you, how they respond to you, how they treat you, will sometimes be determined by how I treat you and how I respond to them when they speak to you in a certain way. So we don't have that, and I do that with each one of them. If one of them disrespects the other, I told them, don't treat my son like that. don't treat my daughter like that. Because they have to, it puts them in a perspective where they realize, okay, this is bigger than just how I behave. This is my dad's son, this is my brother, that's my mum, that's his wife. And I think that holds a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's a good answer?
I think I think
It's a good question, Afia.
yeah, we're here for it.
Yeah. So it's from the outside looking in, it sounds like a good argument initially, but then how far do you go with that? So, for example, they may face other things in any other relationship. So do they need to see it first to then to be able to handle it and cope with it? So, for example, in some marriages, there's outbursts of anger, slamming of doors, throwing of stuff. So do we need to then do that in order to show that, oh, but we're real people? I don't think that's necessary. I think you give them the best possible example so they know that it's attainable at the very least, so that when they do enter into those environments, they're not going to be naive and think no one argues, but they're going to say, okay, well, she's raising her voice, he's raising his voice, but when subconsciously, when I was growing up, I never saw that. So I'm not playing that game. Okay, if you're going to speak to me, you're going to speak to me properly, because my dad would never speak to me like that. Or my dad never spoke to my mum like that. My mum never spoke to my dad like that. And so you give them the best possible example, but at the same time, you don't let them live naively to think that other examples don't exist, but don't give them the worst example either, just for the sake of being real.
So in terms of, we've talked a lot about what the children need, but it's important to also kind of protect ourselves and our marriage. So could you talk a bit more about the type of boundaries that we've put in place to protect our marriage? I guess fine with that. So one example I think would be that our children have to knock the door when they come to our bedroom, because they're respecting our privacy and our private space. They can't just open the door freely. And from a young age, you made sure that they slept in their own beds. Like I remember, they were young, and I was like, no, they need to stay in the bed, and you were like, nope, they're gonna stay in their own bed. And funnily enough, they actually slept throughout the night from a very young age because of that. But you were just always like, this is our...
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the whole motivation behind that initially was quite profound. It was because Benjamin just cried too much and I couldn't take it. It wasn't no marriage. It was just like, nah, it's too much. He would, I don't know if you remember, he would peek over the cot and just look. So you'd be sleeping and you'd open your eyes and you just see this baby like nah. So we had to cover up the cot so he couldn't see us, because that's how he would sleep, because as long as he could see us, he wouldn't sleep. Yeah. And then he would cry, and then, it was a lot. But when I was growing up, especially in Zimbabwe, the parents' room was sacred. It was holy. You would not step foot in the parents' room. You wouldn't even know it in its totality, like the way our children know every nook and cranny. And you'd only go in there for very special reasons, either to get disciplined or to get something, and you scurry in and you scurry out. And there was something very sacred about that, because that was mum and dad's space. It wasn't space for anyone else. And so that's always been ingrained in me. So as the children got older, there was we had a revolving door, and at some point I was like, no, this needs to stop. You wake up and you got one child's foot in your mouth. I was like, where did you come from? Well, they just decided to wake up and go and sleep in your bed. There's a certain level of cuteness to that, but one of the best ways to protect our marriage, because children can be so time consuming, not in a negative way, but just raising children and parenting is so, it's a full-time job. You have to protect your time and space. I think those are the two most important things. Time for us, I can't speak for every marriage, is extremely difficult to try and balance. And I think we're still working on that. But space, I think we've managed to get that quite right. The bedroom, if they want anything, if they even want, they have to knock. And when they knock, they don't come in until they hear someone say, come in. And so, especially you, because you're at home, I think for one of the most important things you need to have is that time where you can I need some alone time. Where can I go in the house and know that as soon as you close that door behind you, there is no way someone's just going to be brass enough to open it and say, I need it, blah, blah, blah. They may knock, but that's your room and that's your space. And I think that's very important.
Are there any other examples of boundaries you can think of that we've set?
Yes. No.
Okay.
What other examples have we?
I don't know.
We haven't, though.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll scratch that question.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait, but unless you can think of one. We don't have any. If we have to think that long, we don't have any.
We don't have any.
So let me just add this then. But with every boundary, you need balance, because the children can't live on can't do. There has to be a certain fluidity and flow. They're still children, and they still need access to us. And so, I think every parent needs to work it out according to their own in-home culture.
So, do you think that our marriage is an important factor for our children's decision to marry and for how their marriages are going to be?
Yeah, 100%. I can't remember who, but some of them, like, Renee said she wanted to marry me when she was younger. And I'm sure the boys have said the same thing to you, because they associate marriage with us. It starts and ends with us. And so in order for communities to be strong, they need good families. In order for good families to be strong, they need good marriages. In order for good marriages to be strong, you need people who are willing to work on it. First of all, I mean, let's just say it, you need people who want to get married. A lot of people in our culture today don't feel like marriage is important. It's just a piece of paper, and it's unfortunate because it just means people are just flowing from one relationship to the next. Or they try only to a certain point, but then, I can't be bothered, and then they move on. But when you have something that has been witnessed by your family and their family, and it's written down and it's solidified, you want to try that a little bit harder. You want to go the extra mile. So perfect marriages, I don't think exist. But good marriages are very, very good catalysts for children to be able to pick likewise. Otherwise, you start in this whole perpetual thing of, if dad is an alcoholic, the chances are that daughter will end up marrying an alcoholic are higher than if he wasn't. And it just goes on and on down in generations. And so there's a lot of empirical evidence to prove that and to show that. They actually did a study once where they took two men from I think the early 1900s. One was imprisoned, and the other was like a doctor or a preacher or something like that. And then they traced down their lineage just to see where their children ended up. And it's crazy. The one who was a preacher, he had children in politics, other preachers, scientists, doctors. I mean, it just trickled down, and they did very, very well in life. Whereas the man who was in and out of prison, murderers, prostitutes, drug addicts, and it trickled down. And you can clearly see the way a man conducts himself in the home has generational implications, major ones. And so I want to believe that when our children are picking their partners, they're going to be able to weed out the good and the bad, or their perceived good and bad from what they've seen in us. So if we are if we are treating each other with respect, they'll be able to recognize disrespect. If we are being courteous towards each other, they'll be able to recognize discourteousness. Okay. They'll be able to recognize the opposite. Yeah. And it goes on and on and on. So I think we've God's really helped us and in that arena.
And are there any marriages that you would say have shaped your view of marriage or have influenced you as a married man, either for the good or the bad?
Loads and loads of marriages, but As soon as you ask the question, it's very funny. The first person that popped into my mind is Earl and Barbara.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Do you know what I love about Earl and Barbara? Is just their joy, humor, and they're very tactile. They act like newlyweds. Just, I would love for us in the next 20 years, should the Lord tarry, we're still playful, we're still making jokes, we're still tactile, we're still annoying the children with our kissing and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, they pop up in mind as first one. Is there any marriages that influenced you?
I would agree with you with that one. I think Uncle Darlington, Monty Monaco as well. I think I definitely see a team.
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah.
And these are all examples of couples like in our mother church. So it's community. It just goes to show how community is quite important. Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I think those are like two of the main examples.
Yeah, and that's not to exclude all of the other married couples that we know in our lives. It's just that they're the ones that popped up first. But we take
don't know,
bits.
Like the ins and outs of their marriages or anything like that.
They probably hate each other, but we take bits. Like, I'm very much a person, if I notice something good, I'll ask you questions about it, and I'll take whatever I've learned and I'll apply it to our own marriage. And so, yeah, there's just been so many. Long short of it all across the board, when you stop becoming a team, it doesn't matter how well you started, then it just goes down from there. That's what I've learned from some. You just have to remember that you chose each other, and whatever happens to you outside of that decision shouldn't mess up that decision. Because this is what happens. People choose each other, and then outside influence comes in, and that outside influence separates them. And you're like, well, I didn't come into this for that thing or for that outside influence. I came into this because of you. Because I chose you, I love you. If you have that mindset, even when the other spouse makes a big mistake, you are still able to navigate those waters, because you both have the same mentality. Okay, you've messed up, but we're in this together. This is a team. We're not a team when things go well. Right? We're a team when we're rich, we're a team when we're poor, we're a team when we're healthy, we're a team when we're sick.
Okay, and so what type of husband do you want your children to know you as? And do you think that's important?
My end goal is I want to be remembered as a father that loved. I think if I can love my children enough, they'll be able to, as they get older and they think back, say, Odin, why did he do that? That was so out of order. They can then filter that through the lens, okay, but I know without a shadow of a doubt my dad loves me. So it was a mistake, it was something I shouldn't have done, but hey, listen, he loves me. And so if I can convey that to them, and I think it's important, because sometimes, when we discipline our children, we tell them to stand at the timeout corner or whatever, the way we are with them, as soon as that time is up, right, they come off, they don't sulk, they don't, ignore us. They come and give us a hug. Things are back to normal as soon as possible, because we've kind of tried to put in them, yes, you've done wrong. Yes, we have to discipline you, but we still love you. And I think that's so key and so important, because we are also going to be in need of grace when we make mistakes as parents from them.
That's true. So you're a pastor, and the reputation of pastors' kids oftentimes is a very negative one.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think about, and is that something that you feel that we need to be very intentional about in terms of our parenting, and if so, how?
It's a very good question, and yes, it's something I think about. I don't think that the rule is not without its exceptions, right? I think that you can be a pastor, have children, and your children can end up very, very well, because there's loads of examples like that. Pastor Peter Ajala and his children, for example, Pastor David, whose children are a lot closer to our children's age. I mean, they have phenomenal children in terms of just their relationship with each other, relationship with God, and so it can be done. And so it's the common mistakes that I've heard preached about over and over again. I've asked questions if I ever get a chance to speak to a pastor's child who's a teenager, I always ask them the question, what is it that your dad did? What is it that your mum did that got you to where you are today? Because you're still serving God, you love, and I'm listening. And so one of the key factors I've learned through listening to sermons and asking questions is the pastor's children that don't end up doing well. And you said pastor's kids, by the way.
Did I?
Yes.
No, that's because like PK, but I don't like the word kids. I don't.
But anyway, it's when they feel like the ministry is more important than them. That's when things start going bad. It's not that you don't become excellent in your ministry. The church is the bride of Christ. The Bible, especially from the book of Acts on, is all about the bride of Christ. Jesus died for the bride, gives gifts to the bride. He's coming back for the bride. And so we have to be, as pastors, excellent in the way we conduct ourselves and how we serve those people and how we love those people. But it cannot be at the expense of our own children, our own family. And finding the balance there is very, very key, because as soon as you come home as a pastor and you're all about the ministry, you're in and out the house. The kids don't spend time with you. You don't go out with them. You don't have conversations with them. That's when you develop. That's part of the ingredients of developing what you call a pastor's kid or PK. And so the little things that we do, right? Every Sunday we try and go out and we speak to our kids as a group, as individuals. We have no mobile phone policy on the dinner table. We always eat together. We take them, you more so to be honest, but we go to their respective, what do you call them? Classes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, as long as they feel loved, and as long as church is not my firstborn, then I think that's very, very important. But yes, it is something I think about, but I also believe that they are just children. They're not pastors' children. They are just children, and I don't put that label on them. You don't put that label on them, and so sometimes it's an outside mentality. Because the second reason why pastors' kids end up going wayward sometimes is because the congregation puts pressure on them to become something that they're not. Because you are pastor's child, that means you have to be your morals, everything, but that's just not the case. You are still trying to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, and to be honest, sometimes they don't even understand much. And something I'm learning is like, just because they're my children doesn't mean that they're saved or that they get what salvation means. And so we try and put all of that in them, not in church, but outside of church. So if you're going to be a Christian, you're going to be a Christian not because your dad's a pastor, but because your father, just as a dad, invested in you as an individual. And all I believe when it comes to children is that we have a window of opportunity to pour in them as much as we can, biblically, lovingly as parents, but at some stage they need to make up their own decision. And the wonderful grace of God is, though there are many horror stories about pastors' children, they always come back. Right? The majority of them come back. I'm thinking about so many stories and so many families, but yeah, they come back.
If you train up a child in the way they should.
Exactly. If their hearts are open to God, at some point every day of those investment come back. So don't leave it to the church to make your children spiritual. Yeah. You invest, you put in them, because you never know when they're going to draw from that well.
And I think that's really important, because I remember for a long time we didn't actually do anything at home with the children spiritually. It was almost as if we just assumed that they would kind of get it by osmosis or something, just by being around us. And then we realised, no, actually we've actually got to set aside time for like Bible study with the children, reading the Bible with them and that type of thing. And so yeah, that's really important. Thank you.
But yeah, no, it's been great, love. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
I live here. What do you mean?
Onto the channel.
Oh, right.
Thank you for joining me onto the channel.
No,
and what I'm going to do is, I think over the years we've read so many books. Like we're both, we love reading. We've read lots of books on marriage, lots of books on parenting. And so what we're going to do is, in the description box below, put a list of all the books that we would highly recommend for marriage and for parenting. They're all Christian books, and they're all extremely good reads, and so please do check out those links in the description box below. And if you are not subscribed, don't forget to do so, and make sure you like the video as well if you enjoyed it, and share it with someone who you think would benefit from it as well. Thank you. Have you got lipstick?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I have some more lipstick?
No.
Okay. Can I go now? They are, what are they, 50s or 60s?
I think they're probably in their 60s now.
Yeah, and they've been married for 50 years?
No, honey, they got married at 10.